You look
Amara's
radiant, my
hands
child.
trembled as the elderly stylist adjusted her veil, and for one moment, everything was perfect. Then the itching started. It began as a whisper along her collarbone, so faint she thought it was nerves. She scratched once, twice, and told herself it was nothing. But by the time the drummers outside began the processional beat, the itch had become fire. Her fingers flew to her neck. Red welts bloomed across her throat like something alive was crawling beneath her skin. "Amara, you're bleeding," her cousin Ifioma gasped, grabbing her wrist before she could tear at her own flesh. "It's not blood," Amara whispered, staring at her reflection in horror. Dark patches spread across her cheeks, swallowing the careful contour work she'd spent 3 hours perfecting. Her lips began to swell. "Somebody get water. Get her mother." The wedding hall, moments ago filled with laughter and the smell of jollof rice and fried plantain, fell into a terrible hush. Richard's mother rose slowly from her seat at the front, her painted smile collapsing into something cold and calculating. "What is this?" she said, not to Amara, but to the room, as if announcing a verdict. "What kind of sickness did this girl hide from my son?" "I'm not sick," Amara cried, but her voice cracked as another wave of burning crossed her collarbone. "I don't know what's happening to me." Richard stood frozen near the altar, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, unable to look at her. "Richard," Amara called out, reaching toward him. "Please, help me." He didn't move. His mother's hand closed over his arm, and she pulled him back one step, then another, until the space between them felt like an ocean. "We are leaving," his mother announced. "This wedding is over." Guests began murmuring, phones rising to capture the chaos, whispers slithering from table to table. Asterisk, she hid an illness. She deceived the family. God is not asleep. Asterisk. Only one woman rushed forward through the crowd, her face a perfect mask of concern, her arms opening to catch Amara as her knees buckled. "I'm here," Teniola whispered, holding her best friend tight against her chest as Amara sobbed into her shoulder. "I'm here, Amara. I've got you." What no one in that room knew, what Amara herself would not learn for another 11 months, was that the woman comforting her, the woman whose arms felt like the only safe place left in the world, was the reason the wedding was ending at all. 11 months earlier, Jasmine Crescent had been the kind of street where everybody's business was tangled together like roots beneath the same soil. Amara's small beauty studio sat 2 doors from Teniola's boutique, and the 2 women had grown up sharing everything: pencils in primary school, secrets in secondary school. And now customers who walked from one shop to the other like they were visiting the same family. "You did it again," Teniola said one afternoon, leaning against Amara's doorframe with a knowing smile. "Mrs. Adiz said you're the only person she trusts with her daughter's face for the wedding." "She's exaggerating," Amara laughed, wiping foundation brushes clean. "She's not. Everybody wants you, Amara. It's always been that way." Teniola said it lightly, but something flickered behind her eyes, gone before Amara could notice it. "Stop it. Your boutique is the best in Victoria Garden District. Nobody dresses better than your clients." "Maybe," Teniola said, turning to look out at the street. "But nobody looks at me the way they look at you." Amara laughed it off, thinking it was a joke between friends. She didn't yet understand that jealousy rarely announces itself. It creeps in slowly, dressed as admiration, until one day it's wearing a different face entirely. The turning point came on an ordinary Saturday evening, when Chief Okonji's son visited the district looking for a gift for his mother. He walked into Teniola's boutique first, browsing distractedly, barely making conversation. Then Amara stepped outside her studio to sweep the pavement, and his entire posture changed. "Excuse me," he said, crossing the street toward her. "Are you the makeup artist everyone talks about?" For the next hour, he stood outside Amara's shop, laughing at her jokes, asking about her work, forgetting entirely why he'd come to the district in the first place. Teniola watched through her window, arranging the same scarf on the same mannequin for the 4th time, smiling at nothing. That night, alone in her apartment above the boutique, she stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. "What's wrong with me?" she whispered to no one. Why does everyone stop for her and walk past me? She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was happy for her friend. But something small and sharp had lodged itself in her chest, and every day it grew a little. Damien noticed it before anyone else did, not the jealousy, but the shift in how Teniola looked at Amara when she thought no one was watching. "Your friend doesn't like me spending time with you," he told Amara one evening as they closed up the studio together. "Teniola? She loves you. She's been trying to get us together for months." "I know," Damien said slowly. "That's what confuses me." Amara waved him off, but she couldn't ignore the truth in his eyes. Damien had built his event company from nothing, one small party at a time, until he was managing weddings for half the district. He'd loved Amara since they were teenagers, patient and steady, never pushing, never demanding. "Marry me," he said one night, taking her hand as they sat outside her shop watching the evening traffic pass. Amara's breath caught. "Damien, I know you think I haven't reached where I'm going yet," he said quietly. "But I will. Just give me time." "It's not about that," she said, though it partly was. She loved him, but something in her wanted more certainty, more security, a future already built rather than one still under construction. "I need to think." She was still thinking when Richard walked into her life 3 weeks later, sophisticated, composed, an investment banker with a voice like warm honey and a watch worth more than her studio's rent for a year. "I've never met a woman who does what you do," he told her over dinner at a restaurant with candles floating in glass bowls. "Turning faces into art. It's remarkable." Amara felt herself pulled toward the stability he represented, the polish, the certainty. Within 4 months, he proposed at a rooftop dinner overlooking the city lights, and she said yes before she'd even finished processing the question. Teniola hugged her tightly when she heard the news, her smile wide and warm. "I'm so happy for you," she said. But that night, standing outside her boutique long after closing, she felt something inside her crack open completely. "Why her?" she whispered into the dark. "Why does she get everything and I get nothing?" She found Mama Sada's stall at the edge of Oak Market, tucked behind stacks of dried herbs and bottled tonics that smelled of bitter roots and old smoke. "I need something," Teniola said, glancing over her shoulder before stepping closer. "Something for my skin. Something powerful." The old woman studied her for a long moment, her eyes sharp despite their clouded age. "You don't want it for your skin," she said finally. "You want it for someone else's." Teniola's mouth went dry. "How did you?" "I've sold enough darkness in my life to recognize the face of someone carrying it," Mama Sad said, reaching beneath her table for a small bundle wrapped in plain cloth. "This is not a gift. It is a debt. Anything borrowed through darkness always demands payment." "I don't care," Teniola said, her voice shaking. "I just need her to lose what she has. Just once. Just enough." "Once is never enough for envy," the old woman warned. "But take it if you must. Just remember, what you send out returns to you, dressed differently, when you least expect it." Teniola's hands shook as she paid and hurried away, the bundle burning against her palm like it already knew what it would do. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, turning the little parcel over and over in her hands. "It's just a beauty treatment," she whispered to herself, rehearsing the lie she would tell. "Just a special bridal soap. Everyone will think I'm being generous." She almost threw it away twice. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's face turn toward Amara, saw Chief Okanji's son crossing the street, saw a lifetime of being the friend who stood one step behind. And each time, her resolve hardened. 2 days before the wedding, she brought it to Amara's studio wrapped in gold ribbon. "For your skin," Teniola said, smiling as she pressed it into her friend's hands. "A gift from me. Every bride deserves to glow." "Teniola, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Teniola said, and in that moment, she almost meant it, almost let herself believe she was capable of taking it back. But she said nothing more, and Amara, trusting completely, used it that very night. The wedding morning had begun in golden light, Amara's mother weeping happy tears as she adjusted her daughter's geli, aunties singing old songs in the courtyard, the whole compound alive with joy. By the time the ceremony began, all of it had curdled into disaster. "I don't understand what's happening to me," Amara sobbed into Teniola's shoulder as the guests fled the hall. "One minute I was fine, and then—" "Shoo, I've got you," Teniola whispered, stroking her hair, her own heart hammering with something she refused to name. "We'll figure it out. I promise." But there was nothing to figure out. Within hours, the wedding photographer had already sold blurry photos of the swollen bride to a gossip page. By the following week, 3 brides had canceled their bookings with Amara's studio, citing rumors they refused to specify. "I heard she has some kind of hidden disease," one former client told another outside the market, unaware Amara was standing close enough to hear every word. "They say the groom's family paid the doctor to keep it quiet." Poor Richard. Thank God he found out before the marriage. Amara stopped attending church for a month. She stopped answering calls from anyone but her mother and Teniola, who visited every single day, bringing food, sitting with her through long silent afternoons, holding her hand as if she alone understood the depth of the betrayal Amara had suffered. "You're the only one who hasn't abandoned me," Amara told her one evening, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "I would never abandon you," Teniola said, and this time, guilt sat so heavy in her chest that she had to leave the room to breathe. Richard reappeared in the district 4 months later, not for Amara, but for Teniola. "I know it's unusual," he told her over coffee, his tone careful, almost apologetic. "But I find myself drawn to you. You've been such a steady presence through everything." Teniola should have refused. Some small, honest part of her screamed that this was wrong, that she was reaching for the exact thing she'd destroyed a friendship to obtain. But 6 months of watching Amara struggle to rebuild, 6 months of pretending sympathy while quietly celebrating her own advancement, had worn down whatever resistance she had left. "I'd like that," she said, and within weeks, Richard was courting her with the same rooftop dinners, the same candlelit restaurants, the same promises he'd once made to Amara. The engagement announcement spread through the district like wildfire. "Teniola is engaged to Richard? The banker. God has finally rewarded her patience. She's always been so loyal to her friends." Meanwhile, poor Amara can't even get a booking anymore. Amara heard the news from her mother, who delivered it gently, watching her daughter's face for cracks. "She deserves happiness," Amara said quietly, and she meant it, even as something twisted painfully beneath her ribs. "I just wish it didn't have to be him." She didn't attend the wedding. She told herself it was because business had finally started picking up again, 3 new clients booked for the same weekend. But really, she couldn't bear to watch the man who'd abandoned her stand at an altar with her closest friend, promising forever to someone else. The wedding was lavish beyond anything Jasmine Crescent had seen in years: imported flowers, a live band flown in from Lagos Island, a wedding dress that cost more than Teniola's boutique earned in 6 months. Photographs flooded social media for weeks afterward, comments overflowing with admiration. Finally, a happy ending for a good woman. She deserves every bit of this luxury. God rewards those who wait. Teniola read every comment twice, savoring them like a starving woman finally fed. For the first time in her life, she was the one everyone envied. She told herself it was worth it. She told herself the debt Mama Saad warned her about had already been paid, in guilt, in sleepless nights, in the weight of watching her best friend suffer. She was wrong. The changes in Richard began small enough to explain away. "Why were you talking to that man for so long?" he asked one evening, watching from across the room as she said goodbye to a longtime customer at the boutique. "He's been shopping with us for years, Richard. He's just a customer." "I don't like how he looks at you," Richard said, his jaw tight. "Maybe you shouldn't work the counter yourself anymore." Teniola laughed, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. Within 2 months, he'd installed cameras throughout the boutique, insisting it was for security. Within 4, he was reviewing her phone every night before bed, scrolling through messages, questioning every name he didn't recognize. "Who is this person messaging you at 9 at night?" "It's my supplier, Richard. We're discussing fabric shipments." "At 9 at night? Convenient timing." "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" His voice dropped, cold and controlled in a way that made her stomach twist. I gave up a great deal to be with you. The least you can do is give me your trust. She began noticing the pattern too late, how visitors stopped coming by, how her monthly allowance from the business slowly funneled entirely through accounts he controlled, how every argument ended with her apologizing for things she hadn't done. "Why can't I visit my mother this weekend?" she asked one Sunday morning, watching him lock the car keys in the drawer beside their bed. "Because I have plans for us," he said flatly. "Family comes after marriage, Teniola. You need to understand your priorities now." Alone in the vast, beautifully decorated house that had once represented everything she'd fought to win, Teniola sat by the window one evening and finally let herself cry. "What have I done?" she whispered into her hands. "What have I done to myself?" She thought of Mama Sada's warning, words she'd tried for months to forget. Anything borrowed through darkness always demands payment. She had believed the payment was behind her. She hadn't understood that the debt collector was patient, that it would come dressed as a wedding ring and a beautiful house and a husband who smiled for cameras and controlled everything behind closed doors. Meanwhile, on the other side of the district, Amara had slowly begun stitching her life back together. Her skin never fully returned to what it had been. Faint discoloration remained across her cheeks and neck, a permanent reminder of the night that shattered her world. At first, she covered it obsessively, layering foundation until her hands ached. But over time, something in her softened toward herself. "You don't need to hide," Damien told her one evening, finding her scrubbing at her reflection in frustration. "The clients who matter will love you regardless." "Easy for you to say," she muttered, though there was no venom in it anymore, only tiredness. "I've watched you rebuild everything from nothing twice now," he said, sitting beside her. "I'm not going anywhere, Amara." "I never was." He'd been telling the truth all along. Through every devastating month, Damien had shown up quietly, recommending her studio to event clients, sitting with her during panic attacks, never once asking for anything in return. "Why do you still care about me after everything?" she asked him one night, months into their slow, careful reconciliation. "Because loving you was never about what you could give me," he said simply. "It was just about you." Word began spreading gradually, not of scandal this time, but of resilience. Asterisk, have you heard? The girl from the wedding disaster, she's still doing makeup, and, honestly, she's better than ever. Asterisk, old clients returned one by one, drawn back by her skill and, increasingly, by her quiet strength. By the 9th month, her studio was fully booked for the first time since the incident. When Damien proposed again, kneeling in the same spot outside her studio where he'd asked years before, Amara didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," she said, tears streaming freely down her face. "Yes, Damien, 1,000 times yes. Even with everything you've been through?" "Especially because of everything I've been through," she said. "I finally understand what real love looks like. It looks like you." The night before Amara's wedding, a knock came at her door so soft she almost missed it. Teniola stood on the threshold, thinner than Amara remembered, dark circles ringing her eyes, her expensive clothes hanging loosely off a frame worn down by exhaustion. "Teniola?" Amara's voice caught in her throat. "What are you doing here? It's nearly midnight." "I needed to see you," Teniola whispered, her hands trembling. "Before tomorrow. I couldn't let you marry him without knowing the truth." "What truth?" Teniola's composure cracked entirely, sobs racking her thin shoulders as the words spilled out of her in a flood she could no longer contain. "The soap," she said. "The wedding day. I did it, Amara. I bought something from a woman in Oak Market, something that would react against your skin, and I gave it to you disguised as a gift. I destroyed your wedding. I destroyed your reputation. All because I was jealous of you, because I couldn't stand watching everyone love you while nobody saw me." Amara stood frozen, the room tilting around her. You did this to me? On purpose? My best friend? "I never meant for it to go this far," Teniola sobbed. "I thought it would just be embarrassing, a small reaction, nothing permanent. I didn't know it would destroy everything. And then I saw an opportunity with Richard, and I took it, and I told myself I deserved happiness too, and I was wrong, Amara. I was so wrong. You let me believe you were comforting me, Amara said, her voice shaking with a fury she'd never felt before. You held me while I cried, knowing you were the reason I was crying at all. I know. I know what I did was unforgivable. But please, Amara, please forgive me. I've lost everything. Richard controls every part of my life now. I have no one left. Please. Amara felt tears sliding down her own cheeks, but her voice, when it came, was steady and cold. You didn't just destroy my wedding, Teniola. You tried to destroy my entire life. And I spent months believing you were the only person standing beside me, when you were the one who pushed me down in the first place. Please, Teniola begged, sinking to her knees. I need you to forgive me. I can't carry this alone anymore. Some consequences, Amara said quietly, are not meant to be shared. You made this choice by yourself. You'll have to carry it by yourself too. Amara, please. I hope you find peace one day, Amara said, opening the door wider, not in invitation, but in dismissal. But it won't be here, and it won't be through me. Teniola left into the darkness alone, her sobs echoing down the empty street, while behind her, Amara closed the door softly and pressed her back against it, breathing hard, feeling something loosen in her chest that had been tight for nearly a year. The next morning, sunlight spilled gold across a small courtyard decorated simply with white flowers and lanterns. There was no imported band, no dress worth a small fortune, no crowd of 1,000 admiring strangers. Just family, real friends, and quiet joy. Amara wore her scars openly, no foundation thick enough to hide them, and for the first time in her life, she felt beautiful exactly as she was. You look radiant, her mother whispered, adjusting her veil with careful hands. I feel radiant, Amara said, smiling through happy tears. Damien waited for her beneath the flowered arch, his face lit with a joy that needed no performance, no audience. When she reached him, he took her hands gently in his. I've loved you since we were teenagers, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Through every storm, every heartbreak, I never stopped hoping this day would come. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was right in front of me, Amara whispered. You're here now, he said. That's all that matters. Across the city, in a house too large and too silent, Teniola stood at her window watching the morning light stretch across a garden she was rarely allowed to enjoy alone. Richard's assistant had already texted twice that morning, reminding her of appearances she was required to make, appointments already arranged without her input, a life scheduled entirely around someone else's control. She thought of Amara's wedding happening somewhere across the district, small and simple and full of genuine love, and she understood, finally and completely, everything she had traded away to stand where she now stood. People in Jasmine Crescent spoke of the two women for years afterward, though the details shifted slightly with each retelling, as stories do. But the heart of it always remained the same. They were remembered not because one woman was more beautiful than the other, but because envy can steal almost everything, a friendship, a wedding, a reputation, a future, except the one thing it promises to deliver. It cannot buy peace. And once peace is gone, no amount of success, no lavish wedding, no admiring crowd can ever purchase it back.